And we are continuing with the 9th chapter of the Dark Secret of Weatherend. Miss Eels, in a move that I don't think is particularly great, snuck into Anthony's backyard and made him sneak out behind his parents' back so that they could plan to meet in secret about what to do about the way Emerson is acting and stop Anders Borkman. And Anthony is all in. We pick up after the page break. On Monday after school, Anthony hurried to the library as fast as he could. Miss Pratt was sitting at the front desk, and the expression on her face would have curdled milk. "She's up in the Windborne reading room," she said through her teeth. "I told her to hang a room not in use sign outside so you two could be alone and do whatever you're supposed to be doing. And you'd better not tell anybody I let you use that room." Anthony hurried away, walking swiftly along the slippery tile floor. He stopped in front of the Winterbourne reading room, and after glancing quickly at the sign on the knob, rapped sharply twice. There was a pause, then the door opened just a crack, and Miss Eels peered out. When she saw it was Anthony, she flung the door wide. "Hi, partner," she said, grinning. "Come on in." Anthony entered, and Miss Eels locked the door. The Winterbourne reading room was small and comfortable, with a fireplace, lots of overstuffed chairs, and flowered upholstery lamps and footstools. Not far from the fireplace was a long, old-fashioned library table. It usually stood against the wall, but Miss Eels had dragged it out to the middle of the room so that she and Anthony could use it to look at the copy of Borkman's journal. Piled nearby were books, a history of Hoosac County, peculiarities of American cities, and eminent Minnesotans. There was a pot of hot coffee on a warmer and Coke in an ice bucket. For hours, Anthony and Miss Eels pored through the books and papers. They scribbled notes and conferred about the meaning of some obscure passage in the journal. Miss Eels spilled coffee on the floor, and once, when she had tried to stick a pencil in the bun on the top of her head, she stabbed herself in the forehead, and, as she often did when she was working hard, she mumbled to herself. She said things like, "sonorous bus." Now what on earth can that mean? And Pam could be some friend of his, but I always heard the old coot didn't have any friends. Anthony leafed through the books and kept wishing he was smarter than he was. He tried to force his brain to work harder, but all he got for his troubles was a headache. Then suddenly it occurred to him that he was overlooking something pretty obvious. There were words and phrases in the journal that kept repeating. Sometimes a word or phrase would be scrawled across a whole page. Sometimes it would be on a page with other notes, but carefully underlined. Were these riddles that had to be solved? The evil plan was to be thwarted? Anthony made a list of the repeated words and phrases. Pam. Pam under the crack of noon. The sign of the inverted torch. Does the sonorous bus go blank blank? For the blood is the life. There are openings in the choir of the Blessed Virgin. Anthony looked at the list and sighed. It really was not terribly helpful. Pam was obviously somebody named Pamela. But as for the rest, well, it was utter gibberish as far as he was concerned. He showed it to Miss Eels, and she mumbled some of the phrases aloud. Anthony went to the ice bucket and opened a bottle of Coke. As he swigged, Miss Eels kept looking at the list, leafing through books and jotting down on a long yellow legal pad. Anthony glanced at the clock on the mantel. It was almost 6, and he was feeling very hungry. But just as he was about to say something to Miss Eels let out a blood-curdling screech. "This is it! This is it!" she yelled, waving the battered old volume entitled Eminent Minnesotans. "It was right here all the time. I was just too lazy to read all the stupid fine print. Look!" When she had calmed down a bit, Miss Eels laid the book on the table. She explained quickly to Anthony that it had biographical articles on famous people who lived in Minnesota, and included one, J.K. Borkman. She had read it through once without finding anything interesting. But the second time, she noticed a footnote number in the last paragraph about Borkman's death. Now she flipped to the back and gave the book to Anthony to read. Mr. J.K. Borkman made elaborate preparations for his burial while he was still alive. He designed his own mausoleum and gave the builders careful instructions about the decorations that were to be placed on the doors and walls of the tomb. Every detail of the building was personally approved by him. He even designed an elaborate device for sealing the tomb chamber, and the secret of this device was known only to him and the undertakers. The Borkman Mausoleum stands in St. Boniface's Cemetery in Duluth, not far from St. Scholastica's College. It is large and impressive and is done in a combination of the classical and Egyptian revival styles. Columns with lotus-shaped capitals flank the mansion's the massive bronze doors, and sculpted on the doors in high relief are two inverted torches. These are, as is well known, symbols of mortality. Anthony looked up. Miss Eales was right. This was important. The sign of the inverted torch was one of the clues he had picked out. And then suddenly another idea hit him, and he laughed. Miss Eales stared at him. "All right, I give up. What's so funny?" "It's just that dumb old joke," said Anthony. "Old Mr. Borkman is buried up in Duluth, and there's this joke that goes, 'Does the bus go to Duluth?' And the answer is no, the bus goes beep beep." At first, Miss Eales didn't get it. She wrinkled up her forehead and stared off into space. "Does the bus?" she muttered, then she chewed her lip. Suddenly her face lit up. "Ha! To Duluth! Toot, not beep beep. And that's one of our cities, isn't it? The sonorous bus. If there's some way of stopping young Borkman from carrying out his father's plans, it seems we'll find it in that cemetery in Duluth. Well, that settles it. We have to go there." Anthony's head was still spinning. Miss Eales was going too fast for him. "But what about Pam and the crack of noon and the rest of the clues?" Miss Eales shrugged. "I suspect they will become clearer when we arrive at the cemetery. Are you coming with me?" Anthony felt awful. His mother would never allow him to go away with Miss Eales. But maybe he should just leave without permission. After all, Miss Eales needed him. Anders Borkman had to be stopped. Miss Eales looked at him sympathetically. She knew what he was going through, but she also knew how important it was for him to join her. The idea of driving all the way to Duluth, over 200 miles by herself, was harrowing. Also, Anthony was good with tools, and he could break into Borkman's tomb. Without him, Miss Eales thought, the mission might end in total disaster. She took hold of Anthony's arm and stared at him hard. "Young man," she said, "a lot may depend on what you decide to do. I don't want to sound melodramatic, but you know that Anders Borkman is trying to destroy the world. Now, I could go by myself, but I am a lousy, nervous driver, and as for breaking into the tomb, well, I have trouble opening a can of beans. So a lot depends on you. I know you think your mom will massacre you if you disobey her, but if you don't come along, there may not be any mom or dad to come home to. I'm going to be making some rather large sacrifices myself. My hearing before the library board is tomorrow at noon. If we leave for Duluth tomorrow morning, I won't be there." Miss Eales paused and relaxed her grip on Anthony's arm. "You will come with me, won't you?" Anthony had never felt more miserable in his life. He licked his lips and tried to avoid Miss Eales' earnest gaze. His stomach was all knotted up, and he felt so incredibly tense that he wanted to run around the room screaming. The marble clock on the mantel ticked quietly. Finally, Anthony allowed his eyes to meet hers. He knew he ought to help her, and yet he kept thinking about the long, lonely drive up to Duluth and the terror that surely awaited them. What if Anders Borkman was using magic to listen in on their conversation right now? If so, he'd find some way of stopping them, and the things he'd do to them would not be pleasant. So far, he had just been fooling around with them because he was sure they couldn't really do anything to stop him. But if Borkman ever thought that Anthony and Miss Eales could actually wreck his plans, Anthony closed his eyes and gritted his teeth. He was scared, but he just couldn't let his friend go alone. He opened his eyes, looked at Miss Eales, and forced his mouth up into a wan little smile. "Okay," he said, "I'll go with you. When do we leave?" And that is the end of Chapter 9.